All right, you guys, Daniela here, and welcome back to another episode of the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. We are talking about branding today. I know that's a topic that we bring up quite a bit, but it's something that I really like to explore and go deeper because I know when I was really first starting out in my business just 4 years ago, to me, my logo was just my brand. That was it. That was the only thing that I thought it was. And as I've gotten into business and gone further and further, I've realized that it is so much more than that. And so I've talked about it on past episodes, but I am by no means a branding expert. So today I've got for you Chris Beltran, who actually is a branding expert. And we are going to go a little bit deeper into how you can use branding in your business. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Daniela. So happy to be here.
So let's just talk about you for a second. And how did you get into branding? How did you know that branding was not just your logo?
Well, I've been doing what I've been doing for many years, over 10 years. And so, I went to college as a graphic designer, and like many people online nowadays, I was in the corporate world, right? So I was a creative director for a multi-million-dollar company and started listening to a lot of podcasts like this, right? And started to kind of work with other online entrepreneurs and saw that there was a big need for branding. That kind of became the last thing on their priority list, which to me is one of the first things that you should be focusing on to really set yourself apart from all the other people in your industry. So I kind of just started slowly transition from the corporate world to the online world. So that's where
So let me ask you, you said you think that that's one of the first things that business owners should do to set themselves apart. So how does branding set you apart?
Well, branding is more than just visuals. So let's just start there. Branding is all about your messaging and aligning that with your visuals and everything that you do. So that's really how you set yourself apart from we'll say your competition, is that making yourself stand out based on your brand story and the visuals that are going to attract people to you and feel basically like you're that one ideal guide that's going to help them get where they want to go.
So I teach on this now in the Spa Marketing Made Easy community, our membership site. And in there, we talk about like when you're finding your ideal client or your target market, the part of the reason that you want to do that is so that all of your email copy, all of your website materials, all of the images that you're using, essentially your brand, can speak directly to that person. But how do you get to that point where you're figuring out, you said, what's your brand story, the images that are telling a story? Like, how do you create that, right? Because how do you know what your brand story is? Like if you're a solo esthetician, you're a med spa, you're a day spa, whatever that is, like, how do you figure out what colors match with your target market or what your story, how you tell that through visuals or through your messaging?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's really, that's what I really walk my clients through is the process of really defining your vibe, right? That's kind of where we start. So the way I start with that is like, how would you describe your ideal clients? We start with trigger words, right? Well, we'll say they're young, they're fun, and we just kind of go through a list of those attributes and those trigger words. And then from there, we can kind of expand upon those words, and then that helps us develop our brand story. Also, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, like if someone is young and fun, you might pick like a hot pink color or something. And if you're thinking about like relaxing and spa and chill or something, you might pick more like a soft blue or a soft purple. Is that kind of what you mean, like where you're going with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, and then there's ways to even attract young and fun clientele, right? They can be more into fashion or more into luxury items, whatever it is. That's how you can kind of dial in those colors, because hot pink is going to really attract a certain type of person compared to gold and black, we'll say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when do you suggest, I know a lot of times in business, like when, you know, for these solo estheticians that are going out, they're starting on their own, there's so much on their plate because they really are one woman shows, right? So they are creating their own business. They're not only, they're wearing the entrepreneur hat, they're wearing the manager hat, they're wearing the technician hat, they're wearing all of these hats. And so branding, it can be one of those things that you feel like, man, I'm just adding one more thing to my plate. You know, is it really important if I pick hot pink or if I pick black and gold? Like, is that going to make that much of a difference for me in my business? So what's your, I believe it does, but I want to know like what you would say to someone who has a lot of things going on and is kind of feeling like, really, you know, like feeling that piece.
Yeah. So just getting clear on your message and your visuals is going to just set you up for success in the long term. Basically, it allows you to create consistency in your brand. So you don't want to have random colors, random fonts, random textures every time you post things, because that inconsistency is going to create confusion. So you got to think about it. What's the cost of confusion? Well, it's either no customers or less customers, right? So when you start getting clear on these things, you're able to really create more and really have more confidence in creating content. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. Another thing with choosing colors or fonts and all that type of stuff, it has to feel good with you and it has to be authentic to your brand. So if you're not really one to wear hot pink and and have these crazy scripty fonts and things like that, then that's not part of your brand, right? We want to stay authentic, and you speak a lot to that. So that's where I would start is, you know, start with these trigger words and then kind of start branching out from there.
And so essentially, you know, what I'm kind of hearing from you is that not only is branding going to help you target your ideal client and speak to them because you're creating images and things that will attract them or catch their attention, but it also essentially it can save you time and money, right? Because I'm thinking now, like I noticed the difference when I use Canva, which I'm sure you're aware of, and a lot of people are using that in their business. And when you get Canva for work, you can do all these templates and so on. And having the same, you know, I use black, white, and my Addo blue. You know, those are the three colors. I have two fonts that I use. So going through and having these templates and having these things done can actually create a professionalism in your business and having that consistency across the board. But it also can save you time because you're just having to go in and you're not having to, you know, reinvent the wheel. You're essentially like, all right, what's on brand for me? Is that
exactly? So the way I explain branding is branding's kind of like a book, right? You have the cover, which is going to be the visual side of your brand. So your logo, your colors, fonts, things like that. And then you have the inside of the book, the inside pages, and that's really your core message and your brand story. And that's when you start getting clear on who I'm serving, where are these people located at, where are they hanging out, then you can start targeting them more efficiently. And then you have that back cover page, which is basically your credentials and your systems to your business. So when you kind of have these things in place, yeah, you can scale your content, you can scale your business pretty quickly because you have that consistency throughout everything that you're doing.
Cool. So there obviously, like as you continue in business, and I'm kind of asking all the questions I'm thinking for myself because selfishly, but I know that for me, a big driver was success happens when you start before you're ready. And I've had probably 7 iterations of my website by this point, because where I was when I started 4 years ago and who I was serving and what I thought my brand was is completely different than what it is. And I've noticed that almost my clients, my students, have been the ones that have almost shown me what my brand is. So as these estheticians are going along and building their business and creating and developing their brand, is it normal and is it suggested? Like, how often would you take a look at your brand and say, hey, maybe I should redo my logo or make little tweaks or make sure that I'm on message as the business is evolving, essentially having your brand evolve with it, right?
Absolutely. That's a great point. Branding, your brand is always evolving. So let's not think that you're stuck with these colors forever, or these fonts. That's a great point, that you've seen that evolution of your brand and you're listening to your audience for those pivot points, right? So I would say at least once a year, kind of just take a look at your brand, and is it still aligning with where you're at today? Because where you were 4 years ago is not where you're at today. So your audience might have grown, they might have different needs, they might be at a certain level compared to when you started, right? Mm-hmm. Now you're working with maybe a professional level, where in the beginning you're working with newbies or something like that. So you kind of are, again, pivoting your position to really attract those clientele that you want to work with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I oftentimes will talk to solo estheticians or spa owners, estheticians in general, and I often say, you are your brand. Mm-hmm. And I say that because so often, like, how you think, act, speak, that is how, like the way that you're presenting yourself to the world, your practice, your skincare philosophy, your services that you're offering are essentially an extension of yourself. So how do you go about kind of marrying the two, like staying true to your brand, but also listening to your clients?
Wow, that's another great question. No, these are great, because a lot of people don't really think this deeply about their brand and their branding. It's kind of like just that surface level. Again, just the cover, right? If we go back to that book analogy, just how's my brand going to look? Well, it goes deeper than that. And this is something we need to really dive into. Is, and the way I look at it is that it is a compromise, right? A compromise of your style, your personality, your story, as well as listening to your clientele and your audience and what they really need. So you're kind of giving them what they need based on what they're suggesting. So I think in a way to do that would just be to listening to what's resonating with them the most. Mm-hmm. And also testing. Testing is just one of the best ways to kind of make that hard decision on, is this working or is that working? And if the colors and your landing pages, and if those aren't working, it's not resonating with that audience. So you might have to step back a bit.
So I guess like finding the intersection points.
Exactly.
Like through testing, what if something just doesn't feel good to you, get it out. And if something, like finding where you and your brand intersect can be through testing and serving your clients and so on. Awesome. So what advice would you give to someone who is just starting out, an esthetician just starting out, and they're wanting to really put the focus on their brand, like you're suggesting? They're saying, hey, I want to do the work. I want to do this right. What kind of things can they do? You said the trigger words, but like, what else can they do to learn more about their messaging and their brand and kind of what their core values are?
It's basic, but one of the things I suggest is when you're talking to a client, look for those aha moments. When you're talking to them and you're talking about your services or what you love to do or what you're passionate about, they're going to light up at some point. And just pay attention to those moments, because that's a lot of these trigger words are kind of hidden in when we're just in the flow of a conversation. So that's what I like to do, is kind of just pay attention to these aha moments that my clients have when I'm working with them, and then start to use that replicate it in my branding, in my messaging, marketing, stuff like that. That's where I would start, is just through your conversations and your interactions with your current clients. Now, if they don't have any clients, then I'm sure you, throughout your schooling or whatever, there's been a time where you had aha moments from your teacher themselves. Kind of take those as well.
So I'm going to kind of switch gears for a second here and talk about kind of what I experienced as a fun activity, and that is creating a mood board. So is that something that you're into, that you do a lot in branding, or is that just like not really a thing?
Absolutely. That's a must. That's absolute must. That kind of gives you the visual creative direction for your branding. So that's definitely the next step. Once we start looking at the trigger words and our messaging, now we have a reference to look for images. So the first thing that I tell my clients is, you don't want to start creating a mood board without any direction. And that's what most people do, is they just go onto Pinterest and start pinning a bunch of things that they like. But there's no direction there. So I actually have a template that I use with my clients to kind of guide them through certain categories. Okay, like age group, what are these types of colors that you want to use, and then you start pinning these things in these different categories.
So you suggest using Pinterest to create a mood board? Is that right? Or is that you just think that a lot of people...
I suggest Pinterest just because it's just like Google. It's like a search engine. So you're able to find a lot of images based on these searches, and most of them are pretty accurate to what you're really looking for.
So that's a great idea. So for those of you listening, and for those of you who are wanting to get clear on your brand, you can create a private board. It doesn't have to be one that's, shown to the world if you don't want to, but create a private board, pin different ideas of images and colors and things that are appealing to you, and kind of sit with it and let it marinate, or show that to, if you're working with a branding expert or someone, I'm sure it's going to be a lot easier for them to understand your style and feeling that you're going for. Even if that's not the direction that you end up going, if they can just see like the images and the feelings that are appealing to you. If you are a pen and paper kind of person, if you're crafty, you can totally just cut things out of magazines, just like you're doing a vision board or something like that, and pick colors and things like that. But that is really like a way, for me, that was something that helped me so much. Was I actually had some website. There was like some free website that you can go in and put your colors in or whatever. And I'll have to see if I can find that to put in the show notes. But it was really cool because I could pick my colors and then pick my images, and it popped out this like very professional looking mood board. But it helped me to say, all right, this is what I'm looking for in my business. This is what I want to create. And that really upped the professionalism of what I was doing with my business and my brand.
Wow. I'd love to know what website that is too.
I'll have to find it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to find it. Cool. So Chris, I think you had some kind of freebie, right? That you can help, that estheticians can download. Is that right?
Yeah. So actually talking about the mood board, I do have a freebie on how to set up your mood board description and an example of what a mood board is and things like that. So I think that'll actually be really helpful since we're talking about it, so that they can start creating their own and start really defining what I call their visual vibe. What's the look and the feel of your brand? Because once you get that down, like you're saying, you're able to create consistent content, and people start to recognize you, and it's just easier for them to find, follow, and then work with you in the end.
Awesome. So there you have it, you guys. You've got an assignment. Thanks to Chris. Go ahead and download that freebie. It's going to be in the show notes, and get started on your mood boards. And if you are in the Estheticians Connect Facebook group and you want to keep this conversation going, why not just tag us, show us a picture of what you're creating with your mood board. We can all vote on the ones that we think are the best. You can tag us over on Instagram, whatever makes the most sense for you. But let's see who, action creates clarity, you guys, and take action. You can't just listen to the podcast, or you can't just, read the feeds going through the group. You've got to actually take action on your business to see the results. So perfect. Chris, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to this episode before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll add is that, being a personal brand, it allows you to have fun and to be authentic and to share what you're doing on social media. And I think that's really the best way to grow your audience and grow your clientele, is obviously by being authentic, being consistent, and having fun.
Yeah, you just opened a whole nother door, because being authentic, it can be really scary online. It can be really scary to be yourself, because there's that fear of being judged, or being, negative comments and all of, I hear that all the time on Facebook Live and on social media and things like that. But, I think that we get the best reaction. Like, it's okay. You don't have to, everybody doesn't have to like you. And really, I think we worry about it a lot more than everyone else. And think about the brands that you resonate with. They're probably the ones that are the most authentic to themselves. So keep that in mind, you guys.
Absolutely. And I was going to say too, just another little tip is to, when you're creating this brand board, or, whether you're doing it on paper or virtually or digitally, look at the brands that you do like, and look at what they're doing, and try to figure out what are the patterns and what are the things that really attract you. Maybe it's the colors, maybe it's the images. These are things just to kind of pay attention to, because that's going to help you really define that creative direction for your brand.
Awesome. Great advice. So I hope you guys all check out Chris's freebie. I want to see those mood boards in the Facebook group, you guys. All right. Thank you so much, Chris. And I'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thanks for having me.